I consider myself a mystic, and I'm in constant communication and channeling. And when in these classes, when you're asking me questions, most of the time I'm just channeling, right?
Oh, I see. Okay.
But it's not like a trance channel where I go into a trance.
Sure.
My mind opens up. And just to share some experiences with you, just kind of bring you up to speed. The reason we're here today is because that began for me in 2014, on April 4th in 2014, one night, late at night, my girlfriend then, wife now, was asleep. I couldn't sleep, and so I started doing some meditation. And suddenly I began to realize that I was having thoughts that were not my thoughts. It's very, very subtle. And most people are channeling all the time and don't realize it because the thoughts that you're thinking, you think it's all your thoughts because it sounds like your voice. And guess what? It is your voice. It's very, very subtle. That's why we miss it most of the time. But it'll come to you sometimes and say, well, you need to do this. And it'll say you. The ego always says I. Have you ever heard that voice in your head say, well, you need to do this or you need to do that, and you're just talking to yourself, and you don't realize you're actually channeling your higher self. That's your intuitive self. And it sees the potential in the near future, and it's always helping you in the near future experience. It's really not too concerned about what's going to happen, honestly, tomorrow. It's only focused in the now. It's always present. It's looking at the potentials in your experience in the present moment. And if you're headed down an avenue, let's say, that's not in your best interest or the best interest of others, or maybe you have an opportunity to help others that you're not conscious of, it'll say, hey, take a left, let's take a left up here, right? And it'll sometimes say let's, and it'll sometimes say you. Anyway, to carry on to short description, that night I began to realize I was having thoughts that were not my thoughts. And I began to have a conversation. And the conversation is just like us talking right now, but it's in my head. And I had earplugs in, so I'm pretty sure nobody was actually, piping anything in. And that voice, and we had just moved to Tennessee. And I just moved my wife there. We'd only been here about 8 or 9 months, and we were literally looking around at places where we might be able to start a ministry. And all the doors were closed. Nothing was opening up. It didn't, we thought about, we'll just buy a house and maybe build a small, building out back and just start, promoting ourselves and just start, because we both wanted to do ministry, and she was almost in a place of being ordained. This voice said, and this conversation went on not for just a minute or two, this went on for I don't know how long, but certainly well over an hour. I mean, I didn't want to stop. This was the most exciting experience I'd ever had in my life, literally. And I'd had a few already that were leading up to it. But this was direct communication. And it was fantastic. And I was just in this, I was here. I was blissed out. I was totally blissed out. I didn't even realize how blissed out I was. I was just so excited and so elated. And I started, and I looked at, I'm sitting in the bed, sitting up, and she's laying there, and I'm so excited. I'm like, and I'm having these thoughts, and I'm like, should I wake her up? I had that thought. And the voice said, no, she's sleeping. Leave her alone. It's a very common sense voice, right? And so then I had the question, I said, well, what about her? Because I've been married before, and I had lots of girlfriends. That's not an issue for me. And it's like, and that voice said, oh no, before I could even get the question out. It was already formulating in my mind, and I call it the voice, but at the time I call it Jay. And Jay's like, oh no, you're never gonna leave her. And that one, and it's not a voice of commanding. It's not telling you what you have to do or should do. You have total free will. And when you leave here tonight, you decide which way you turn when you get out here on this street. You are in the dimension of free will, and nobody can override that. God is not going to override your free will. You have all power in heaven and earth to decide what you want to do now. But this voice said, oh no, you're not going to leave her. And I will tell you that there's been incidents since then. We've been together, and that was in 2014 now, almost 5 years since then. There were times, if I hadn't have gotten that nudge, that communication, there were times when I would have been following my old patterns. I would have packed my shit and left. I'm an escape artist. I mean, I was really good at it. And I would be gone. I would have been gone a long time ago. But I was willing to stick it through, because even whenever that stuff comes up, that thought comes back in my mind. Oh no, you're not going to leave her. And it's for her and for me. Whatever Spirit's directing you to do, it's for the best of all. The other thing that Spirit said is, oh, by the way, we had just moved down from Toledo. It's like laughing and it's very joyous. Spirit is not serious at all. And it said, oh, by the way, you're going back to Toledo. And I'm like, going back to Toledo? I did not like Toledo. I don't like cold weather. There's nothing in Toledo I wanted to be there for. And I'm like, going back to Toledo? I don't want to go back to Toledo. Why are we going back to Toledo? Like that. I mean, I'm incredulous that this voice is telling me that I'm going back to Toledo. And he said, because that's where you'll continue to awaken. Well, I can't argue with that. How am I going to argue with that? Right? So the next day I woke up. I finally got tired enough that I could, it's like, okay, get some sleep. It's all good. And I thought, I didn't want to go to sleep. I didn't want this to stop ever. But I thought as soon as I would go to sleep, I'd wake up tomorrow. It's all over, right? Well, I wake up the next morning and the voice is still with me. And I managed to start to get my crap together. And, I told Claudia, the first thing I woke her up, I said, oh, by the way, we're going back to Toledo. And she's like, what? What are you talking about? We're going back to Toledo. And all I could do was start laughing hysterically and then start crying hysterically. I was blissed out. And every question she would ask me, Spirit would answer it in a higher level, and I couldn't repeat it. I can't even tell you now exactly what it was that was being told or said, but it was just so much clarity and so much purity of thought that all I could do was just is laugh at the ridiculousness of being questioned. All human questions are silly, ridiculous. That's the level. I was literally in that mind. When Jay said, you see me, you see the Father, that's what he's referring to. See, this is you as the mystic. This is the soul self being expressed, embodied as you in this experience in form. That's what this is. That's the game. That's why you came to this game of separation. And so that lasted for 2 or 3 days. I couldn't function. All I could do was kind of laugh and cry. And for the first couple of hours, Claudia thought, oh, this is pretty cool. He's had this great mystical experience, right? And after a couple of hours, she's like, oh my God, I don't know if I can take this guy out of the house, right? I didn't want to eat. I was just blissed out. So slowly but surely over the next 2 or 3 days, it kind of started to fade.